In a windswept valley in British Columbia's interior lies Lower Nicola, a small First Nations community. Here the band has helped build businesses based on agriculture and forestry, but another industry also runs right through their land.
Right here, if you look this way and you come down this way, is where the current Kinder Morgan pipeline lies.
This is also where Kinder Morgan's new Trans Mountain pipeline is slated to go, but only if the community allows it. Ottawa may have given it the green light, but that doesn't mean all those living along the line are on board. Aaron Sam is chief of the Lower Nicola Band.
We have been having discussions with the company for a few years now. We still aren't at a place where we are satisfied with supporting the project.
He worries about the prospect of a spill and the impact oil sands development is having on climate change. Sam had hoped the federal government would delay making its decision on Trans Mountain. It didn't. In fact, the Prime Minister made the announcement 3 weeks ahead of the government's own self-imposed deadline.
The Government of Canada has approved the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain Expansion Project.
When Kinder Morgan's first line was built in the 1950s, the challenge was crossing the rugged terrain. The obstacle now, the divided political landscape.
If this project wants to proceed ahead without much controversy, it's important to get as much buy-in from First Nations as possible. I don't believe we're there yet.
The new Trans Mountain line is slated to cross land owned by 6 First Nations. Kinder Morgan has struck agreements with 4 of them.
Getting into communities is the only way you truly appreciate and understand what the concerns and the issues are.
For years, Ian Anderson has crisscrossed BC and Alberta, making his pipeline pitch. He's president of Kinder Morgan Canada.
Me personally, to get to know chiefs, I know virtually all of them by first name all across the line.
The company has received 39 letters of support from First Nations and has confidential agreements that are worth more than $300 million. The deals last for 20 years and guarantee investment and jobs for those First Nations that are on side.
So how critical is it to get these deals in order to get the social license to move forward?
Well, I think they're important to the extent that, in my mind, is a strong statement about public permission social license, that we've listened to the concerns, we've factored them in, and the community has told us they're okay.
Michael Labourdays helped negotiate one of the first deals with Kinder Morgan.
See these markers here? That's the pipe there.
He used to be chief of the Whispering Pines Clinton Indian Band.
We were beating each other up with lawyers for a few years before we realized we want the same things. You want to keep the oil in the pipe. You want it to be safe. You know, we've all seen the photos of the muddy ducks or the oily ducks on the beach and, you know, those kinds of things. And we both want to avoid that.
They began to etch out a deal with the company in 2012. In 2014, they voted unanimously to sign on.
There was people who are still opposed to the pipeline in my community, but they saw the benefits in it, and they supported the agreement. So this is where our reserve begins, right here.
It's common practice for First Nations to sign these types of agreements with industry working on their reserves or traditional territory. But what makes Trans Mountain unique has been the scale of the negotiations.
It's the Mount Everest of consultations. Well over 100 bands have to be consulted on the expansion of the Trans Mountain pipeline.
It's not just First Nations that have been at the negotiating table. The plan is to have the new line run under nearly 3,000 private properties, including right through this front yard.
This is the old pipeline.
Jeff and Tracy Lodge are pro-pipeline. They see Trans Mountain as being a good thing for Canada's economy. They just don't want to see it as a bad thing for their property value.
I don't have a problem with a pipeline on a personal level from being underneath the property. I just have concerns that we want to be compensated and we don't want to be pressured into signing agreements that we don't feel comfortable with.
Negotiations, which have been underway for years, continue, but the clock is now ticking. Construction on the new pipeline is set to begin this fall. If Lower Nicola doesn't agree to a deal, the company could reroute the pipeline around the community, and it could miss out on potentially millions of dollars in benefits.
For us to make the right decision, it's important to know what other people are doing. And it's also important, I think, to even look internationally. You look at places like what's happening in the United States in Standing Rock.
Stop the pipeline!
For months, thousands of protesters have gathered near the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation to protest the Dakota Access Pipeline in the U.S. At times, there have been violent clashes with authorities.
So you think that could happen here, what we're seeing in Standing Rock?
Well, I don't know. I can't foretell the future, but there are many people that are very concerned about this project moving forward.
Indeed, about 2/3 of the First Nations consulted haven't supported the project. Some political leaders and environmental groups have vowed that the protests will just get fiercer. So even though the company may have cleared the largest hurdle in Ottawa, the promise is to be more along the route. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Lower Nicola, BC.